You wrote this in The Atlantic, where you have a piece we're going to get to in a minute, but you said the proximate cause is not M. tuberculosis, but Homo sapiens.
Yeah, I think ultimately the cause of tuberculosis in the 21st century is us, because we know how to treat and cure this disease. So you can't really say it's caused by a bacteria anymore. It's a bacteria we know how to kill. It's a bacteria we know how to deal with. The real cause of tuberculosis in the 21st century is humans, human choice, human-built systems, systems that leave some people out and include others.
The story of TB in its contemporary form, and of course, because you're a historian in its history, you tell also through the story of Henry. Who is Henry, and why were you going to Sierra Leone in the first place?
So I was in Sierra Leone with my wife to learn about the maternal health care system there, because my wife and I support a maternal hospital in Sierra Leone. I didn't know that TB was still a thing. I was like most of us, where I thought TB was like the disease that killed John Keats, not a present tense phenomenon. But when we were there, we were asked to visit the tuberculosis hospital. And I was like, there's a tuberculosis hospital? And when we visited the TB hospital, LaCa, I met this boy named Henry, which is also my son's name. And he looked to be about the same age as my son, about 9 years old at the time. And Henry walked me all around the hospital and showed me the wards and showed me the laboratory. And eventually we ended up back with the doctors, and they sort of shooed him away. And I said, that's the sweetest little kid. And they said, he's not a little kid, he's 17. He just looked much younger because he was so emaciated, first by malnutrition and then by TB.
Now back to the current moment. The Trump administration has cut a great deal of foreign aid. You write about this in The Atlantic, jumping off from the book. Explain why those cuts have such an impact.
Well, almost all tuberculosis funding has been cut by the U.S. government, and that's catastrophic because the U.S. has long been the most generous supporter of the fight against TB. And so, unfortunately, what we're seeing is what one expert predicts is a 30% rise in multi-drug resistant tuberculosis over the next few years. That's not just catastrophic on an individual level. That person's TB becomes much harder to treat. It's also catastrophic on a societal level, because it means we have much more drug-resistant tuberculosis floating around in communities, leading maybe most scarily to a possibility of a totally drug-resistant form of tuberculosis that none of our tools can cure, which is a threat to all of us.